while fighting his way through S.H.I.E.L.D.'s reality-bending suburban super prison known as Pleasant Hill, an aged and depowered Steve Rogers was returned to fighting form by a sentient cosmic cube known as Kobik. Sam Wilson agreed to share the title of Captain America, and with Red Skull, Baron Zemo, and Kobik all at large after the collapse of Pleasant Hill, the world could use these two heroes now more than ever. In the right moment, it only takes one person to change the world forever. Back in 1926, that person was Eliza St. Clair. My father was not a good man, but Eliza protected us. She gave my mother comfort when she needed it most. She saw strength in me that none had seen before. She saw great things in my future. In the right moment, any of us can be a hero. Ever since I was a young boy, I saw this. These events inspired me, and I followed in their footsteps. Today's mission is being monitored by Sharon Carter, S.H.I.E.L.D. Commander and Congressional Liaison, and also the love of my life. Rick Jones, my former sidekick, is helping out. Or trying to, at least. Resistance is heavy. I do what I can, and Sharon asked if I could see the bomb. I see him all right. His name is Robbie Dean Tomlin. He didn't have the best childhood either. Robbie dreamed of better things, but poverty kept him from ever going to college. He opted for a life of crime. He wasn't very good at it. In prison, he fell into a bad crowd of white supremacists out of the need for protection. By the time he got out of jail, his life was in a downward spiral. He turned to drugs and began a life of squalor. Robbie was only saved through hope in the form of his old cellmate who had made a powerful connection. Robbie never stopped believing. But the funny thing about hope and belief is sometimes they come from the strangest of places. Under the Red Skull's influence, Robbie finally found purpose. This was his chance to be something. This was his chance to belong. So Robbie happily took their mark. He was still innocent, though, and lost faith when his comrades beat a man to death for no reason other than the color of his skin. After that, it was almost a relief when they told him it was time that he gave his life for the cause as well. So here Robbie sits at the front of a train with a bomb strapped to his chest. We're all heroes. We're all just trying to make a difference. The goons in my way are nothing. It's easy to break on through. Meanwhile, Sharon deploys Jack Flag and Free Spirit into the field to take out the Hydra staging site. I don't like it, nor do I approve. They're just kids. Sharon should have waited for me to circle back after I was done here. But she's stubborn, just like her aunt. Rick manages to detach the rear cars of the train, getting almost everyone clear of the blast radius. Almost everyone. I leap to the car. I find Robbie. I tell him there's always a better way. I let him know I understand his pain. I tell him that his mother misses him and wants him to come home. He speaks and then, no! I don't leave the blast unscratched, both physically and mentally. It's taking a while to get used to the new shield, and the body. I used to look in the mirror and not recognize the old man staring back at me. Now I don't recognize this. Being young and with powers, it's a lot to handle all at once. Sharon asked the next time I encounter a living cosmic cube that can restore youth, I should probably mention my partner too. She asked what I'm thinking, so I tell her the new Hydra is getting under my skin. When I looked into that boy's eyes, I saw nothing. She tells me people get led astray. I'm not going to save them all. Every day this woman really amazes me. Sometimes it's the tiniest things, but sometimes it's those little things that go a long way. Sinclair always understood that. She was always kind to me and my mother. But there's no time to dwell on that. I have a meeting, and while Jack Flag, Free Spirit, and Rick Jones share stories in the mess hall, Sharon and I are to sit down with Maria Hill. When I arrive, Maria and Sharon are already fighting. Honestly, I was hoping they would have worn each other out by now, but Maria is otherwise in a good mood. For once she has good news. They found Zemo. After that fiasco in Pleasant Hill, the Baron dropped off the map. Word was that he kidnapped the S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist Dr. Eric Selvig and forced the man to help him find Kobik, the sentient cosmic cube. Beyond that, he's been impossible to find, until today. Zemo appeared in Begalia, a city with no laws and rife with supervillain activity. Announcing the Red Skull is telling lies when he declares himself the head of Hydra, Zemo declared himself the true ruler by divine right. He has assembled a handful of heroes, promising them wealth and more members soon. But he shouldn't worry so much about having to rebuild from scratch. S.H.I.E.L.D. is about to save him the effort. The villains strike out at us, but they are second-string criminals for a reason. Not Zemo, though. He's able to escape in his personal aircraft. I order the kids to focus on his lackeys while I go after our target. It isn't too hard to get in and attack Zemo, but luck isn't on my side today. I happen to land on the emergency cargo drop hatch and nearly fall to my death. Call it luck, call it destiny. It's amazing how our futures can change. But these are the moments that let us be heroes. Jack sees me in danger and moves in to help. That is what makes you a hero. How much you are committed to doing what's right, in big ways and small. It took a while for my mom to understand that, but eventually she asked Eliza if there's anything she could do in return for the kindness this woman showed us so long ago. Sinclair only said that we should have hope in our hearts. In a few years, I would be strong enough for both me and my mother. She was right. Zemo taunts me. I ask him not to do this. Suddenly, no. Damn it, kid. He thinks everything is okay, but it's not. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Moments can change everything in the blink of an eye. Sinclair did eventually ask for something in return for her kindness. She wanted us to come to a meeting of like-minded individuals, a civic league of sorts, intent on making the community a better place. My mother was reluctant, but she took a pamphlet anyway. Eliza promised my mother she'd like what they would have to say. In the right moment, one person can change the world forever. Jack Flag saw a moment just like this. In that split second, he saw someone in need and did what was right, without second-guessing himself or worrying about the consequences. He's a hero. He deserves better than this. But that is the price we must pay for what must be done. The road has not been easy. I've had plenty of doubts. But still, after all this time, I hold true to what I believe. I follow in the footsteps of those who inspire me. You see, I dream of something better too. Hail, Hydra. In their arrogance, S.H.I.E.L.D. took a cosmic cube, a thing of unlimited power, able to shape reality with a simple thought. It became sentient, and they were able to convince it to work with them. And what did they do? They built a prison. Because they are meager and small. Because it is all they know. And in their foolishness, in their stupidity, they never asked the right questions like, where did this cube come from? And just who is its rightful owner? Years ago, the Red Skull once had this cube, but in a battle, Steve Rogers was able to shatter it. S.H.I.E.L.D. took the pieces to study these remnants. That did not end well. They were not worthy of its power. Luckily, it was not all in vain. Something beautiful was born. This young child named Kovic was new to the world, but her power was insurmountable. S.H.I.E.L.D. recruited Dr. Selvig to talk with her and better understand the young girl. Meanwhile, the Red Skull is bored. Having Charles Xavier's powers meant he was no longer challenged by anything. Everyone just does what he says. But it isn't the same as conquering a people. When they bow, he wants them to mean it. And his daughter Sin only comes to him with more of the same. A mind-controlled army, green and yellow leotards, doomsday machines, infiltration. It's all so uninspired. It's all been done before. The Red Skull wants something new, something convoluted, a challenge, something that will break his enemies once and for all. Suddenly, a guest appears in the form of a young girl. Alarmed, the Red Skull orders his man to kill the intruder, not caring about her young age. She is unharmed by the attack, so Sin steps in, only for the child to notice her facial disfiguration and instantly restore it. The young girl is as confused by this as the villains are. Everyone's yelling at her, but she thought the Red Skull would be nice. He used to be nice. When they were little, they made a whole world together. He held her in his arms. But then there was a fight, and she was broken. The Red Skull realizes this little girl is the Cosmic Cube, his Cosmic Cube. She mentions that these weird shield people are talking to her and trying to be her friend, even though she accidentally hurt them. Kovic isn't really comfortable with that, and wants to be the Red Skull's friend instead. And the man was all too happy to oblige. With this new ally, the Red Skull knew he would have his victory, providing both a line into S.H.I.E.L.D. and unlimited power. Kovic would be the key to all of this. A hacker may have exposed S.H.I.E.L.D.'s lies and slowed down his plans, but his enemies were also humbled while Steve was torn apart from his closest ally. While all this happened, the Red Skull bonded with the sentient cube, teaching her of a Hydra that brought happiness and peace to the world. One day, Kovic mentioned she didn't understand the people at S.H.I.E.L.D. If they want to make the world a better place, they should just join Hydra. Kovic also mentioned she's been doing a really good job at keeping the Red Skull and Hydra a secret from S.H.I.E.L.D. After all, she doesn't want to ruin the big surprise party. But she does mention that Dr. Selvig was onto her, so she had to make some changes. The Red Skull was shocked at these words, but Kovic reassured him that everything was fine, and teleported them both to S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. There, Dr. Selvig was shocked at their appearance, and got on his knees. It was a true honor for him to finally meet the Supreme Leader. Trying to make sense of this madness, the Red Skull looked into the man's mind, and saw something incredible. Memories he couldn't have of a life he couldn't have lived. A life within the Hydra of Kovic's stories. And there it was. This is how they would all fall. The Red Skull ordered Selvig to develop the concept of Pleasant Hill within S.H.I.E.L.D. Naturally, such a perverted and insane idea would be heartily approved at the highest of levels. From there, it was easy to manipulate Zemo into staging a coup within the prison. The villain captured Steve and Maria Hill, and attempted to topple S.H.I.E.L.D., at least for a time. The Red Skull then infiltrated the prison himself, posing as a priest, and using his telepathic abilities to let Zemo lead Steve and Maria to Selvig. They deliberately tricked Steve into running off, only for him to end up confronting Crossbones. From there, knowing that Kovic liked Steve, the Red Skull knew she would do anything to save him. She would remake him into the hero he once was, but different like Selvig. She would make him Hydra. This is how the Red Skull broke Steve Rogers. This is how he finally wins. He always knew Cap would be the pinnacle of man were it not for his corrupted soul. But now, together, these two will do wondrous things. They will lead an army. They will inherit the earth. They will kill Steve's old friends. They will turn everything the man has fought for into a pile of ash. And then, Steve will kneel before the Red Skull and utter the words, "Hail Hydra." Steve Rogers contacts his Supreme Leader with news about what happened in Begalia. In spite of Dr. Selvig's pleas, it was no difficulty to take down both him and Zemo. However, there was a complication. Free Spirit and S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered Jack Flag. Sharon Carter immediately wanted to go in and rescue the young hero, but things weren't so simple. Begalia is a city controlled and populated by supervillains. Landing a S.H.I.E.L.D. vessel in the middle of the city would not end well. But things weren't looking good. Jack wasn't breathing, and some of the villains were starting to notice their presence. So, with no other choice, Sharon went in. This got everybody's attention, and pretty soon, they were greeted by the local sheriff, Taskmaster. Now, he saw a number of crimes being committed, in particular invasion of sovereign territory, and, well, he's got a trip advisory rating to protect, so... Taskmaster mocked Steve, not surprised to find him in the mix. Though he's gotta say, that new shield? That thing does not look aerodynamic at... Don't ever touch her again! On the second thought, Taskmaster is coming around to the whole new shield thing. At this, Begalia went into a state of martial law, and Cap and his crew knew they had to get out of there fast. However, they quickly found themselves swarmed. Thinking quickly on his feet, Vic Jones announced to the mob that, as a man who just hacked and publicly humiliated S.H.I.E.L.D. only 2 weeks ago, in 5 minutes he would empty the bank accounts of every casino in the city. If they had any chips or money stored there, the villains would have to move fast or lose everything. This plan worked perfectly, and the heroes regrouped and got ready to go home. As Cap comforted Free Spirit over the loss of Jack, the paramedics on scene made a surprising announcement. He has a pulse. In the present, this news shocks and outrages the Red Skull, seeing this as utter failure on behalf of his servant. He scolds Rogers and points out the man is still soft. They are so close to victory, they can't lose control now. He has to kill Jack Flag. They can't risk anything. Steve knows the risks. He understands the danger. He knows he probably isn't going to live through all this, but he has to try. However, as he approaches Dr. Selvig, he wonders if he has to do it alone. Steve Rogers remembers his mother Sarah packing. She said they could never meet with Hydra again. When there was a knock at the door, the boy's mother told him to hide. Miss Sinclair was visiting, having been worried about Sarah missing their last meeting. She asked to come in. They needed to talk. In the present, Steve Rogers approaches Dr. Selvig, who is shocked and does not understand his being here. Rogers explains that the Red Skull ordered the doctor's death, seeing him as a liability. But Steve disagrees. He thinks that together they can restore Hydra, a true Hydra, not some abomination that has become corrupted under the influence of one man. Rogers understands that Selvig might be reluctant about all of this, so he offers a gesture, this lab. Securing it wasn't easy. In fact, it came at a terrible cost. The lab belonged to an old villain named the Red Ghost. After being mangled by Steve Rogers, he forced Ghost to activate a mysterious protocol known only as Project Oniseth. Captain America remarked on the villain's incredible work, saying he should be proud of what he has done here. The villain ranted about how he was trying to make a world a better place, calling Cap Imperial scum. Cap says that the Ghost did make the world a better place. Well, he will. But for now, Rogers needs something else from the Doctor. His silence. Cap gives Selvig a tour. For now, he'll have to stay in this lab, and for everyone's safety, certain parts of it will be locked off. As for S.H.I.E.L.D., they're already busy destroying themselves. As they speak, Maria Hill is being investigated over the Pleasant Hill Initiative. The hearing will be conducted by Everett Ross, a government worker with close ties to Wakanda. Maria says this is a mistake. With the Red Skull coming, a war is inevitable. Ross happens to agree, which is why he thinks S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to be at its best. And for that to happen, Maria can't be the one leading it. Meanwhile, the U.S. Senate is conducting a hearing. They are considering radical new proposals by Sharon Carter in order to combat the latest Hydra threat. The senators are concerned about civil rights, but Carter insists that their threat they face is unique, that her and Captain America personally endorsed this proposal, and that they need the Senate's help. As for the other superheroes, well, they don't trust each other. They're going to end up distracted because of it, too busy to worry about Rogers and his plans. So they're not a concern. But one person remains a loose end, Jack Flag. Watched over by Rick Jones and Free Spirit, the young hero still hasn't woken up. In Begalia, Taskmaster reviews the plane crash that allegedly killed Selvig. They find the remains of Zemo and somebody they assume was the good doctor, but little else. Taskmaster isn't satisfied, however, and wants to take a look at the flight controls. Something just isn't right here. Selvig realizes why he's been rescued. Kobik. They will need to make sure she doesn't accidentally reveal Cap. Though Selvig points out she could literally be anywhere, Steve already knows where she is. In orbit around Earth, the Thunderbolts are in a heated battle against alien invaders. Kobik realizes the invaders are just scared, and she can make it better. In a second, the aliens disappear. The sentient cosmic cube has sent them home, and she can do the same for the team. The Thunderbolts find themselves back at Pleasant Hill. This upsets Fixer, who yells at the little girl. She apologizes, and Winter Soldier calms her down, explaining this isn't their home anymore. So she returns the team to their base, where Fixer warns Bucky that he needs to get the girl in line, or he will. Kobik feels bad, realizing she must have done something wrong. Bucky tells her it's okay, and that they'll play some video games together in a bit. She walks off, happy, when Bucky gets a call from Rogers. The transmission is cut short when Kobik secretly cuts him off. Rogers has tried this a few times now, but isn't worried. There are other ways to make contact. Elsewhere, a young woman named Avril is meditating when she begins to panic. A man named Wendell tells her to calm down and guides her out of it. He explains that the quantum bands take some getting used to, but she's Quasar now, and it's part of the job. Rogers and Selvig will need to act fast. They aren't the only ones after the cube. The odds are stacked against them, but Rogers has faith. This is what he's been working for every day of his life, ever since he was a little boy. Back then, Rogers watched Eliza St. Clair and his mother argue. Sarah claimed that Hydra killed her husband, and however abusive he was, she just can't accept this. When Sarah moves towards St. Clair during the argument, one of Eliza's men killed the mother. Rogers tried to run, but they found him. It was okay though. St. Clair had big plans for the boy. The world needs saving. It is corrupt and weak. They have to win. It is their destiny. The future has been foretold. The glory of Hydra will be restored. It will be the strength it once was. And only one man stands in their way. A long time ago, Steve Rogers was taken by Eliza St. Clair. She promised the young man that his mother was fine. She just had a bump on her head and needed to go away and rest for a while. The woman told Rogers that he was going to have to be strong in the days to come. He was going to a special place, somewhere the young man could find his destiny. The days ahead would be dangerous and scary, but if Rogers did everything Eliza told him to, she promised he would see his mother again. She takes the boy to two men, Daniel Whitehall and Dr. Sebastian Fenhoff. They greeted the young man cordially and invited him inside. There was much to discuss. In the present, the Red Skull carries out a clandestine mission in Sokovia. As Hydra moves to act, Rogers is busy elsewhere at a party with the superheroes, who are celebrating a recent victory over a rogue Celestial from another dimension. There, Steve Rogers first learns of the boy Ulysses. This news is upsetting to both he and Dr. Selvig. Already they have a loose end out there in the form of the still injured Jack Flag. Ulysses' premonitions could easily expose Rogers and his plans. So, Captain America reluctantly agreed with Selvig to kill the young Inhuman. What else can he do? However, when he infiltrates the city of Adelan, he is surprised to see Tony there, who manages to kidnap Ulysses. Rogers is thus unable to kill the young man. Instead, he comes up with a new idea. Ulysses seems to predict threats to the Inhumans' own survival and global catastrophes. There's a sense of priority within his brain. So they just need to create bigger threats and a distraction to keep all the heroes busy and away from Rogers. Thus, he asks Selvig a question. How much does he know about gamma radiation? Not long after this, Dr. Bruce Banner gets a letter with a USB card. This anonymous message says the drive contains information on a promising new cure for gamma radiation. And, well, what happened next was only natural. Death, distrust, rage, and then war. It's in our blood. It's our weakness. It comes so easy because hate is natural. Later, Rogers got a message from Carol Danvers explaining how they arrested a woman named Allison Green, predicted to be directly responsible for a planned attack by Hydra on the world's financial institutions. There's only one problem with this. Hydra has no such plans, and Rogers would know. He's even able to confirm this with the Red Skull, who is all but certain they are mistaken in this arrest. Rogers has an additional command which surprised Steve. He was to do no harm to Ulysses. Instead, the Red Skull ordered Rogers to side with Carol Danvers, or, if her crusade seems doomed, Tony Stark, and, in the fallout of the all but certain upcoming war, capture Ulysses for Hydra's own nefarious purposes. The Inhumans' unique powers could prove most useful indeed. In the past, Dr. Fenhoff was unhappy with the young Rogers joining their program. He was small, diseased, weak, no better than typical gutter trash. Eliza insisted otherwise, and, after some coercion, she was able to secure the young man a chance. But he would get no special treatment. As far as Whitehall was concerned, Rogers would face challenges like any other of the children in the program. So the only way he could survive would have to be by his own merits. Rogers has a plan. A way to bring peace and order to a broken world. But this is a very complicated, dangerous place we all live in. It loves chaos. So, why is he surprised to learn that the world has plans of its own? In the past, Steve Rogers was considered a failure. The boy was weak and frail. He was not responding to any attempts at re-education, and the other children would shun him. It was recommended, for the glory of Hydra, that the boy be euthanized. Steve Rogers would never amount to anything in this world. In the present, the battle between heroes ends when everyone gets a vision of Miles Morales killing Captain America. This, predictably, leads to an argument between Carol and Tony. Steve, however, sees beyond this bickering. It will do nothing. All you can do is take control of your destiny. Rogers kneels in front of Miles and asks him to get up. This is Spider-Man. That means something to a lot of people. He asks what Miles wants to do, and the young man says he wants to go home. Captain America agrees, and though Carol and the others try and stop them, Doctor Strange teleports the opposing team away from the battle, while Miles flees with Thor. In the past, Rogers escaped from the Hydra school only to run into a fearsome man who introduced himself as the Kraken. The man explained to Rogers that it's okay to run, it's a very natural instinct. He went on to say that the boy has been brainwashed with American ideals of individualism, but those notions are flawed. The boy saw it for himself. America is filled with poverty, disease. His own father was a failure. But the Kraken believes in a better way, a better world, and a better future. And he owes a debt to Eliza St. Clair, who saw something in Rogers. So he gave the boy a choice. He could come back to Hydra and prove everyone wrong, that he is destined for greatness, or he could run away. At an old bunker formerly owned by Nick Fury Sr., Steve and Tony have a talk. Everyone is looking at Rogers with sympathy, but he isn't terribly shaken by any of this. He asks Tony if the war is the right way to go, if it's worth it. Tony panics at these words and hopes Rogers isn't switching sides. Them being on the same side for once is really making a difference to Stark. Rogers points out that overstepping civil liberties was never really a problem for Stark before, not during the first Civil War, and again during the incursions. Stark argues that he's trying to atone for what he did, but eventually admits a big part of this has to do with the simple fact that his best friend is dead. Steve points out that if Tony invented something that did what Ulysses could do, he'd be all over it and would probably be fighting on Carol's side for it. Rogers thinks that the real problem is that Stark isn't in charge, and that he can't handle this. This offends Tony, but Rogers doesn't let up. He recognizes a lot of his father in Tony Stark, and doesn't like what he sees. Control issues, mistrust, paranoia, manic behavior. Steve has a question for Stark. When was the last time he had a drink? This really gets to Tony, who leaves incredibly angry but promises they'll talk about this later. Rogers protests, but in reality, this is exactly what he wanted. With Stark off balance and questioning himself, Rogers has him in the palm of his hands. Meanwhile, Sharon Carter has begun to track down Miles Morales. Rick Jones is able to find him, exactly in the first place they probably should have looked. Rogers then goes to visit Selvig. The Doctor insists that they kill Spider-Man, but Rogers says the best thing for him to do would be to go to DC. Selvig points out that's the worst thing they could possibly do, as it's basically leading to the exact situation the Vision predicted. Rogers replies that while everyone at the battle was paying attention to Spider-Man in the Vision, Rogers was looking elsewhere. He's better trained than that. He looks at the world around him. Spider-Man may very well kill Steve Rogers, but it won't happen tomorrow. Because when it does, it will be worth it. He will die for the glory of Hydra. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is the complete story of Captain America, Steve Rogers, Hail Hydra. So this story is admittingly rather incomplete. I have mixed feelings about the whole thing. Essentially, I'm making this complete story video kind of out of a frustrated obligation. Marvel is calling the next batch of issues a new story, and we're getting to that point where collecting these issues together would save me a lot of hassle down the road. I don't have a million videos to try and find and edit back together. So we're just gonna do this, and when the whole Cap Hydra thing actually gets to a point of resolution, I'll make it into one super long, cohesive video that makes a little more sense in my brain. Because this story is far from over or paid off in any meaningful way. We have the bombshells of the first few issues, followed by the Civil War II tie-ins. And that's it. I don't feel like I'm giving this a proper retrospective review like I usually do with these complete stories. It's a new beginning, of sorts, featuring a very different Captain America, and one that on the whole I kinda have mixed feelings about. It should be cool, but the whole hero turning evil thing is kind of getting old, and these comics don't do much to address that, to challenge that notion. It feels kind of old given all the stuff we've had with Superior Spider-Man and Iron Man in recent years. Because it's similar, they're all kind of the same flavored thing, just under different circumstances. The art was consistently good from start to finish, that's something we can easily get out of the way. It was just great. Excellent use of color, well-defined faces in action, and overall just some high-quality work from the art team. Good for them. However, the story just doesn't quite live up to that. The only cool thing is just how big of a role Rogers played in the Second Civil War, and the big reveals of Hydra Cap. Especially if you read those without knowing the twist, it's pretty cool. But even then, without knowing the event of this or Civil War II, I have no idea how, if, or when any of this stuff will pay off. Meanwhile, once you strip away all the plot twists and shocking moments, the comic doesn't really offer much else. All those twists and turns might be able to carry this thing, but once I went back to these comics for this review, they didn't feel as fresh. They don't have much staying power once I look back on them. I still feel like I have no idea where Marvel is going with this. That's good that I'm guessing, but this story feels like it's starting to show some cracks. It's trying to do a lot at once, and as such, there are huge moments of lag which kind of drag things on a bit. It might all be in the service of some grand, glorious payoff, as this idea of Hydra Cap continues to unfold. But at this point, my doubts are mounting. I expect it won't. I have a feeling things are just going to start fizzling out and we'll get an okay ending. The comics already feel like they're dragging out events far more than they need to be, so I'm not sure it's going to pay off anytime soon. Then as we get to the million-dollar question, do I recommend this? Well, I don't know, have you read Brubaker's stuff yet? That's still way better. In the world of Captain America's stories, does this really stand out? Is it worth reading compared to other works featuring this character? By those standards, kind of. It's not a bad story by any means, but it's nothing that special either. I know I've defended this series before, but that mostly comes from the utterly ridiculous criticisms leveled at this comic early on. I am still annoyed at all the dumb people who felt obligated to be offended because Cap is a Nazi. There's so much wrong with that supposition, and while I've talked thoroughly about it, it doesn't betray some American ideal. This is nothing new in the world of comics, it won't last forever, and yeah, it's just not that big of a deal either way. He's allowed to turn evil, he's done it before, it happened 2 years ago, and it's happened a lot more before that. Jeez guys. This story isn't brilliant, but it doesn't strike me as some big political threat either. And considering how death threats and general nonsense behavior was elicited by both the left and right sides of the political fence over these handful of comics, it all feels a little petty. Like maybe you guys are all riled up over something else. I don't know. I have no idea what that could possibly be. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like our channel, check out our new Patreon page. Donors get exclusive rewards and a direct say in the videos we make. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.